Welcome to Subject to Change, a sustainability podcast. We're here with Nick Carparelli to learn more about concrete masonry units.
Over that 20 years, here's the first big question.
Uh-oh.
Over that 20 years, there have been a lot of changes.
Hopefully.
What was a change that maybe challenged you more than others? And could you tell us about it a little bit?
Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. When you see the little microphone in the lower right, click on that to learn more. We're so glad you're here.
The biggest change, there's been several, as I said. One change has been consolidation in the industry. When I first became director of the association, there were over 40, something like 44 or 45 independent block producers in New York State alone.
I didn't realize there were that many.
Yeah, there's still a lot. We still have a lot of capacity, but through consolidation and through people retiring and just going out of business, that number's down to around 32. Another big challenge that is ongoing, and we've worked with another group, Upstate Masonry Institute, is workforce development. You know, you can sell all the blocks you want, but if you don't have the labor to put things together, you know, that's a problem.
Got milk?
Right now, I'd say the biggest challenge to our industry is something called our checkoff program. One of the big challenges we faced over the years is really a minimal budget, both nationwide and statewide. We just don't have a large enough budget to do the things we want to do.
Time to talk about embodied carbon.
I know one of the things that's changed a lot, and you helped with writing and supporting the lower carbon concrete spec. One of the things is a growing awareness of the embodied carbon in concrete masonry units, concrete bricks. How has your association, how have your individual participants been grappling with that? I'm sure it's a challenge to some and it's an opportunity to others. And what are some of the things you've learned?
Well, what I've seen across the country and in the Northeast is there are some progressive producers who recognize, you know, hey, this is it. This is the coming thing. We need to do something. So, you know, okay, the NCMA has come up with, National Concrete Masonry Association has developed the product category rules. So now individual producers have come up with their own environmental product declarations. There are others who say, my customers can't even spell EPD, so why should I bother? In the middle, we've gone to at the national level. We recognize that, like the National Ready Mix Concrete Association, we need an industry average EPD. And so we're working on that. I'm on the technical subcommittee to help develop that. Yeah. So that's exciting. So we're doing that. I mean, you see it. You just see it everywhere, especially in New York City. And we have a very progressive block producer who's located in, of all places, Brooklyn, New York. And she, the CEO, the owner, she has already gone in that direction and developed EPDs for all her products. So again, as you're aware, it's not an inexpensive process, but it's necessary.
And you know, it's never all or nothing.
Just to make sure that people who are listening have an idea of what an EPD is, can you give us a couple of sentence description?
Environmental product declaration, sure. Yeah. It basically measures the how can I do this somewhat intelligently? Basically, it's a scorecard or of potential greenhouse gas equivalents that the product is responsible for.
That's great. Thank you. And I think EPDs cover everything that the environmental impacts of producing. So it also can include information on water, information on contaminants that are released, those kind of things. What's really cool is, at least in the concrete spec, guidance spec that we wrote, we clarified, it's like you said, it's very expensive to do an EPD for a product, but but there can be, and you mentioned this already, an industry average EPD that gives a
Right.
sense of the big picture. Then there can be a regional EPD, which can get a
Mhm.
little closer to what's happening in your area of the nation. And then there could be a product specific EPD. So
Right.
in that spec, we were able to write it saying, look, we really want the product specific one, but we know things are still changing and not everyone has that. So
Right.
next on the list is regional. And then if there isn't that, let's go with the industry average. And if that's not available, we encourage you to get one. And here's some information that can help you do better even without getting that
Right.
paperwork.
Wow, less than 300 pounds.
Typical 40 cubic foot batch of concrete and a block application requires something like 400 pounds of cement, but that's for 40 cubic feet. So per cubic yard, if you break that down, it's about 270 pounds per cubic yard. And then, there's almost everybody uses some kind of supplemental cementitious material.
Mhm.
Okay, so that further reduces the cement content. Now we're seeing basically the mandatory use, the widespread availability of PLC, a limestone Portland cement,
Mhm.
which has greater limestone content, which further lowers the embodied CO2 in cement.
A lot of people ask, why change?
And it's like people are making innovations in windows all the time and in heating and cooling systems all the time, but changing concrete, why? It's been around since the Romans first put concrete down, and those things still exist. So why are we changing it?
Exactly.
Like,
The Pantheon
really?
still stands. So
Yeah,
it
right.
says, so why bother?
One big shift is pre-insulated CMU.
But thankfully, there are a few, again, the progressive producers who are willing to take a chance.
Yeah.
For example, we've seen a great number of a great increase in the number of pre-insulated concrete masonry units.
Yeah, which is great. That's where they've
And-
got like some kind of insulative material in the cores of the block.
Right. Right.
Or yeah, so that the wall has some insulation properties as it goes up.
Now, there's a building that went up in Utica 2 years ago. It's a Central Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired. And this building was changed from your typical steel stud, siding, wallboard on the interior, to one width of concrete masonry units that they were called a high R H block. In other words, one web, okay,
Mhm.
open on both ends. One web reduces the thermal bridging, for starters. And actually, the way these are configured, there is no thermal bridging. It's interesting the way they configure this, but nevertheless, they're pre-insulated and they're finished on both sides. So the
Yeah.
interior finish and the exterior finish, one and the same, which provided a challenge to the mason because now he's got to make sure both sides look good, right?
Yeah, right.
But nevertheless,
Hmm.
the project came out beautifully, and the owner is extremely happy.
That eliminates several layers of material, so you're reducing labor, and
You're
it also
right.
reduces materials. So by reducing materials, you're reducing carbon potentially.
Mhm.
Do things differently.
I'm a big fan, and you know this because I've been teaching energy code for quite a while, so I'm always picking apart what what R value means, what the thermal bridging means. I'm really curious, and anything that starts to do things a little differently to try and achieve more performance is very exciting.
Plus, another bonus, by using a company called 3D-IQ, basically it's BIM for masonry.
Yeah.
They were able to lay out the building and eliminate all the waste, because I think they ended up cutting like 1 or 2 units. That was it on this entire project. So there was almost zero waste.
Understanding thermal mass benefits.
So I think concrete walls are commonly used as heat sinks, right? So does the insulative wall help with the heat sink property of that, or does it reduce that ability?
The answer is it depends. If a
Okay.
unit, okay, it's a very good question.
Oh, good.
If you take a conventional concrete block and you place the insulation on the inside of that, okay, and in the conditioned space, well, you've effectively insulated the wall from the conditioned space, so therefore its ability to or its thermal value is reduced, it's diminished. If you do it the other way, on say a conventional cavity wall, in other words, a concrete block, insulation on the exterior surface, and then covered with some sort of material like a brick veneer, okay? Now you've maximized the thermal value of the masonry, because why? Now it's exposed to the heating and air conditioning, the conditioned space. A block like the one that was used on Cab V, we call it Cab V for short, has masonry exposed on both sides with the insulation sandwiched in between. So a good portion of that block is indeed exposed to the conditioned space, thus increasing its thermal value.
Installation is another issue.
That's one part of it. Production is one part, but installation is another part. And obviously we've got labor shortages
Yeah.
seemingly everywhere. So is that on production? Is that on installation? Is that on things I'm not even thinking of?
All of the above. You know, on the Mason side of things, there, as I said, Upstate Masonry Institute that's their bailiwick, so to speak. We, in New York State Concrete Masonry Association, we are concerned over production. But yes, it's difficult to find good people who want to stay, people who are willing to, as you alluded to earlier, work hard, work in a rather dusty, noisy, dirty environment, in an air-conditioned block plant with machinery that throws off a lot of heat on days like we've been having. And conversely, yeah, there's heat in the block plant in the wintertime, but that's a challenge too. And then it's tough to find drivers, truck drivers.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You know, it's one thing to drive the truck from point A to point B, but it's another thing to now remove the load from the truck and place it where the customer wants it.
And we certainly need to tackle process loads.
One of the things that's going to be important in getting to a lower carbon future is also changing manufacturing cycles and processes like heat recovery, and how can that heat become energy to fuel the line, kind of thing.
Yeah, well, that's a great point. What I've seen over the years is an increase in efficiency, overall efficiency of the speed of the machines. So, you know, the more block you can make, the less energy, you know, you're putting out per unit.
Yeah.
Per unit.
That's cool.
Larger capacity machines. You know, there are machines out there that'll make 6 units at a time instead of the traditional 3.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there's just a little increase in probably pouring in the mix, but otherwise you're nearly doubling your production. Pretty much.
Yeah. You're somewhat limited by what you're, you know, the block producing process. Have you ever visited a block plant, ever toured a plant?
No, but when I was doing, I forget which project it was, we did this really cool kind of blended mix, so you could still see 2 different colors kind of amorphous through the block, and we had to predetermine the number of units so that the run could be specific to that mix. It was almost like when I buy yarn to knit, I have to buy everything from the same dye lot.
Right.
So we had to have all the blocks from the same dye lot.
Right.
Let's talk Legos and bespoke CMU.
And I would think, all right, so here's me being like the 7-year-old playing with Legos. You know, when I was 7-year-old and playing with Legos, there were like 6 different shapes. I mean, there weren't a lot of different shapes. And now every single kit has specialty shapes, and there's Lego Technics, and there's a million different forms and blah, blah, blah. I would suspect that something similar might be going on with masonry units, that there used to be one shape. You know, there was like the cinder block, which was what it was called, and it was ubiquitous. And now it's an entirely
absolutely
bespoke industry.
Not only different shapes, but different sizes of units now. There are what's becoming popular because of its efficiency, is a 32-inch long block with a vertical score. So it looks like two 8 by 8 by 16-inch units.
Wow.
Now, how are you going to put that in the wall?
How about the mule and Sam?
More automation. There's something developed called the mule. I think
I've seen this.
Have you seen it?
I
Well,
haven't. What is
You
it?
have, oh,
No.
it is actually like a hydraulic arm that lifts the block, and the mason all has to do is guide it and set it in the wall. You Google it, you'll be amazed. The mule, it's from a company called Construction Robotics, which is right here in New York State in Rochester.
We also had a project when I was at DASNY that I saw the video for where, wow, that bird almost flew right into my head. That was
Uh-oh.
interesting.
I didn't see it. I was taking notes.
I saw the little beady eyes coming right toward me. So we also had this project where they had a bricklaying robot, and it was a robot that had an entire bin of bricks, and it would take the brick and it did the basic smear and put the brick down, and there was just somebody watching it to make sure it didn't get out of skew.
Right. Somebody
was
to program the computer.
Quite
Same
amazing.
company, Construction Robotics, and that's nicknamed Sam, the semi-automatic mason.
Yeah.
The automatic piece.
And it's really cool because for expanses of a unified pattern, you can employ that. And then when you get to like a window head or a door jamb detail, you can get the mason in there.
Skills are needed.
We would see additional people going into the labor force if they knew that it was becoming mechanized.
You have to wear a lot of hats. You need welding skills. You need to be able to program a computer. You need to be able to.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, because everything is computer controlled now. You need all sorts of mechanical skills, and otherwise you're going to be spending a lot of money on people to come in and fix what might be a very, very minor problem. Will it make it easier? Yeah, I think so. If we can make it look a little more attractive, and I think we can get more people to come into the industry. I think a lot of this is a lot of these are mom and pop operations, really.
Yeah.
Some of them are second, third, even fourth generations involved in these businesses. There are two of our members that are celebrating 100 years in business this year.
Wow.
Yeah, it's hard to believe in this day and age that they'd have the longevity. And there is that next generation on the way up to carry it forward. And I think that's where a lot of the people come from. That's where a lot of it's hands-on.
Part of that check program also advertising about the future for people, the opportunities for people coming to work in the industry.
Lower carbon.
You know what? I'm always suspicious, and you know this, Nick, that I'm always suspicious of the claims of sequestration in concrete and concrete masonry units, because there has been some, I'm not going to say intentional greenwashing, but some things that felt like promises bigger than what they actually were when you did the math. And that happens in every industry. I'm not trying to throw bad vibes onto concrete at all. But I think that if we really look at it honestly, there is an element of sequestration. There are some numbers there. It's a smaller percentage when I do the math than I expected out of the gate, or when Jim did the math. Let's be honest, Jim did the math. I just shared the math. But the thing that's really important about concrete and concrete masonry units is the durability and the longevity. And I think that's where, in my mind, the power lies, is in taking that material that can last for centuries, and we know that, and using it in buildings that need to last for centuries. I think personally that we shouldn't be using CMU in strip malls that we plan to tear down in 20 years. It doesn't actually make material sense to me.
Unless you fully intend to recycle that concrete.
Yeah, and there are ways to recycle it as
Right.
fill. There are more ways to recycle if you're able to break down a wall and clean up things. That's a labor-intensive process, but it's doable. There are all different aspects of it, but quite often, and it's really unfortunate because I don't think it benefits the impression of the value of CMU, is that a
Yeah.
lot of the buildings that go up quick and are torn down are like just straight runs of plain CMU with maybe a color band.
Mhm.
I'm thinking like, like a Home Depot.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because it can be so incredibly beautiful and long-lived.
Yeah. Exactly. I agree 100%. I wouldn't try to promote that the convenience store chain convert to concrete masonry units, because in fact, like you say, 10 years, 15 years, you're going to tear it down and go to a new design anyway.
No, that's something else that has to change. But while that's still happening, let's avoid doing that with concrete.
Right.
Let's do the wrap up.
I love your nature, Nick. I just have to say this. You have this way of talking that is so welcoming.
Well, thank you.
And I appreciate it every time we talk.
Well, I always enjoy our get-togethers, so but I appreciate the kind words. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So first question. It's
Okay.
a real easy one. We try and make these videos create connection in the moment, but also create connection to other people that we can learn from, or other people that are inspiring. So we ask, who's your hero? Who do you want to share with us that could inspire us further?
My hero, huh?
Yeah. In any realm of your life, work, it doesn't matter.
To tell you the truth, my heroes are the people who inspire me are my producer members of this association.
It's great.
Who have worked through so much that I've seen over the last 20 years, whether it's, adapting to new regulations, getting through a pandemic. These are the folks who sign their paychecks on the front. Those are the folks. They take the responsibility every day, and those are my heroes.
That's
awesome.
great. And I think it's great by saying that you're also kind of grounding the idea, hopefully for the people who will be watching this, that when you see a building go up, think about who's making those materials.
Yeah.
Think about where those come from. Likely, if it's concrete masonry units, they're not being shipped from China.
No.
They're local production with local aggregates and definitely local labor. It's happening there. That's really important to remember, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything plastic is probably coming from abroad. But masonry,
undoubtedly. Yeah.
It's around the corner, I'm sure.
Oh gosh.
What, do you think that was too strong?
No, that was funny. With 32 producers in New York State, they literally could be right around the corner.
Yeah, that's true.
That's very true. Cool.
Is there I can go on to one of the organizations that you've already discussed, right? And I can find my list.
Oh, absolutely.
Producers.
You can go to our website, nyscma.org, and right on the homepage, if you scroll down, there's a map of New York State.
And Nick's focus surprised us.
If we could ask all of humanity to take a collective pause and focus on just one initiative, what should everybody be focused on if you had your say?
Oh, wow. The first thing that pops into my head, and I say it half in jest, but half seriously, is let's figure out how to abandon drive-throughs at fast food joints and stuff like this, because you see a line of cars from here to God knows where, all sitting there idling, wasting gas, wasting fuel, and putting CO2 into the air. Or at least make it mandatory, turn the car off while you're sitting there.
That's
and
awesome.
Let's face facts, we could all use a few extra steps. It's just
good
for the body.
Get out and get some exercise. Yes, exactly.
It's just good
I
to
never-
stretch.
the
Oh
only
my
time
God. Go ahead.
Now, the only time I ever used a drive-through was at the bank when it was closed because of COVID.
Mm.
And that was the only way to make a deposit. But
We
other than
walk
that,
up to the drive-through at the bank when we're on our walks. We
Ah.
walk up and use the drive-through.
That's cool.
It's so funny. But the other thing about drive-throughs is think about how much that amplifies the pavement around. Like think of a standalone Starbucks,
Right.
and there's parking, and then there's again that much pavement in order to create a drive-through around the other side.
Right.
Why? That's I love that answer.
That was out of left field, and I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you very
Hoorah.
much. Great.
Thanks, Nick. I'm
Thank
Well,
glad this
thank
worked
you
out.
both. Thank you.
So
you
nice
both
to meet
very
you.
much.
I learned a ton.
It's very nice to meet you too.
We'll
Yeah,
talk soon.
yeah.
All right.
Be well.
You too. You too.
All right.
Bye.
Take
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.